Without a doubt, the most frequent question I get from claims managers is, how can I justify the cost of training? I know my people need it, but how do I justify it to everyone else? Well, I'll tell you, at International Insurance Institute, I can almost always tell when we're going to get a job. If a company calls up and asks, how much does your training cost? We almost never get the job. Why? Because that company sees training as a cost, and most companies are trying to lower their costs. So we almost never get that work. But if a company calls up and says, we really need the training, how much do we need to invest? We almost always get the job. Why? Because they see training as an investment, and that's the key here. The key is to think of training as an investment rather than a cost. And when you invest in something, what do you expect? You expect a return. The hard part is justifying that beforehand. It's pretty easy to do it afterward. If you do a negotiations training class and you see your average payments drop, case closed. If you do a time management training and see people saving themselves hours a week, case closed. If you do a customer service class and see customer satisfaction scores increase, retention improve, all while closing times decrease, case closed. The hard part is getting the approval up front and justifying it to the folks with their eyes on the budget. It can be a little difficult. That's why I developed the return on investment spreadsheet for my customers, looking for a straightforward way to see training as the investment it truly is. If you already have this spreadsheet, feel free to enter the numbers as we go along. If you'd like to download it, please download it right here. It's completely free. You ready? Let's get started. But let's go ahead and talk about the investment. We are going to talk about some costs, and I always encourage my customers to think about the productivity cost. It's not just the price of the training, but it's also the cost of people being in the training class, and you really should consider that. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's start with a group of claims people, and let's say on average they make $25 an hour. We'll go ahead and put that in. Okay? They're going to be in class 8 hours, and you have a productivity cost of $200 per person. The class, maybe the class is $450, let's use that. And let's say you have 30 claims people. You're talking about a $19,500 investment, and that's the real investment because you want to consider the fact that they're going to be in class and you're paying them. Then the next thing to do is what would be realistic as far as improvement? Well, let's say this group has an average of $30,000 in weekly settlements. Now, of course, depending on what group it is and what kind of claims, we all know it's going to change. Some people are going to be newer, some people are going to be more seasoned, and that's going to be different, of course. But let's just say as an average for that group, it's $30,000. Well, then what would be realistic? So let's take a couple examples. Let's say you have a golfer. He's a very good golfer. He's been playing golf for 9 years, and he shoots about 100. But he's never actually had any formal training, never had anybody actually work with him as a pro. And let's say you give him a pro for a full day. And that pro gives him 12 different tips that he could use to improve his game. And let's say he goes back and he actually puts in 4 of those. He really focuses. Over the next 3 months, he puts in 4. What percentage would it improve? Would it be 10%? Would he drop down to 90? Would it be 5%? Would that be realistic? 95? I mean, 4 tips from a pro is pretty good. Well, let's just say 4. Let's be extra super conservative, and let's just say 4. Well, let's take another example. Let's say you have a bowler, someone relatively new, and let's say they're bowling at 100. Same thing, you give them a pro for a full day. What improvement would it be? In 3 months, if they put in 4 of those 12 tips, would it be 120, 110, 10%, 105, 5%? Well, let's go back to that 4%. Wouldn't you at least expect, that'd be pretty ridiculously low, wouldn't it? 4%, that's pretty realistic. So what I want to do is I want to start with that. Regardless of how experienced your claims people are, if they haven't had any formal training on negotiation skills for claims professionals, there's a very good chance they could pick up some tips to improve themselves. And let's start with the very lowest one. Let's start with 4%. Basically what you have now is each person on a weekly settlement saving about $1,200. That's $60,000 per person. Well, assume 50 weeks, you're talking about $1.8 million in savings compared to the 19.5 of the investment. That's the kind of return we're talking about. Now, if you look down a little bit, you'll see the return on investment, 1.8. The investment was 19.5. Total net savings, 1,780,000 and change. What is that? That's a 9,000% return on your investment. Most companies are happy with a 20 and 30% return on their investment. We're talking about a 9,000% return. Now, I get the question about cost. Well, there is a cost. And you know what the cost is? The cost of not doing training. That's the real cost. Think about it. You're talking about saving $1.7 million, 245 days. What is the cost of not doing training? It's over $7,000 per day to not train them. That's how much you're paying every day to not have these people trained and not getting that savings. So that's the real cost. The cost is not having training. But let's go back. Let's say, well, Carl, these people are making 25. These people are making, $65 an hour. We got some high-level people here. And we don't have 30. We've got 125. And weekly settlements, probably up around 70,000. Now you're talking about a $17 million savings for a $121,000 investment. You're talking about a 14,000% return and a cost of $70,000 every single day to not have these people trained. Well, Carl, 4%, but what if it's lower? Fine. Let's make it 2%. You're still talking about $8 million compared to 121. Let's make it ridiculous. Let's say only 1%. Now, how could you possibly only save 1% when people are more skilled than they used to be at their job? Well, let's put in 1% just to be ridiculous. We're still talking about a 3,500% return on the investment. This is what I encourage my customers to take a look at. You want to look at the productivity cost and the actual price of the training, but look at this as a return. Even if you only save 1%, which is ridiculously low, you're still talking about a 3,500% return. Now, just for fun, I'm going to give you some real numbers I actually had from some of my customers. And one was they had 45, and they had 340 people to go through. The weekly settlements, about 35,000, and actually saved about 3%. $17 million on a $275,000 investment. One of our biggest ones, just for fun, we're going to plug in some numbers. Our biggest one, we did have a group of very skilled claims professionals. I think it was about $70 an hour, 1,200 claims professionals. The weekly settlements were right around 40,000. And just for fun, we lowered the percentage to 2 from 3 just to be extra conservative. And we're still looking at $48 million for a $1.2 million investment. A 3,800% return. So what I would encourage you to do is check out these numbers. Get the real numbers. And if you want to include wages and including their benefits, by all means, put that in. All right? But what you are going to want to do is determine how much we're going to have to invest. And that's the productivity cost and the price of the training. And what would be a realistic return on investment? So think about the professional golfer and bowler, there. How much can we expect people to improve? Well, some claims, the settlements themselves, the dollar amounts aren't negotiable. So you might not be able to reduce those, but they're still going to negotiate better. They're going to be able to settle claims quicker. They're going to be less claims in litigation when they're better negotiators. And by the way, you can use this not only on the settlements, but you can use these skills to negotiate percentages of liability. So maybe before your claims people were negotiating, well, we're going to pay 90%, but because they're better negotiators, they're now 80% they're paying in contributory negligence. These skills aren't just in the actual settlements, they're in the percentages as well. All right, so you have the spreadsheet. If you've downloaded it, feel free to contact me or email me anytime. I'm happy to walk through these numbers again. And I hope this video has been helpful for you. All right, take care.
Welcome to our fun claims unit. We make new friends every day. We are always smiling and happy. Where our work just seems Welcome to our unit.